and look at him go! Oh, baby. Oh, no!
This is ABC's Wide World of Sport. Racetrack or time of day, it doesn't matter to Kenny Brack. The Swede, transplanted to Houston, is a perfect match for owner A.J. Foyt. Nighttime at Charlotte saw his first win. Daytime at Pikes Peak, Breck's skill combined with Foyt's savvy ran all others out of fuel. On fumes, Breck made it 2 in a row. In the dark at Atlanta, Kenny went high, low, everywhere he needed to go. For Breck and Foyt, it was now 3 in a row. Today in Texas, it could be 4, and the championship for Foyt and Breck. The Pep Boys Indy Racing League is at Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth for the Lone Star 500 on one very, very hot day here in Texas. Temperatures expected to go above 100 degrees, and we have many stories for you. Kenny Brack could possibly wrap up an IRL championship here today. That is, if he wins this race, it would be 4 in a row for him, and most of his contenders decide to drop out, but with the heat, attrition could very well be a factor. And then there's Billy Boat. He's the pole sitter driving for A.J. Foyt. 225.9 miles an hour. That's the fastest speed ever officially recorded by this combination of chassis and engines. And then, of course, there's the track itself with the blistering heat. Who knows what will happen in this run of 312 miles. Now, Mike Groff will join me here in the booth for the play-by-play call, but right now, he's out in turn 4. Mike?
I'll tell you, here at Texas Motor Speedway, it's very difficult to emphasize what 24-degree of banking really is and what it really means. But as you can see with the angle of this Oldsmobile pace car and the awkwardness of my stance, we're having a hard time sitting still. But I got to tell you, these IRL cars are far from sitting still. We're talking about these guys running speeds at over 220 mile an hour through this very corner. And I'll tell you, the combination between the downforce that these cars make and the 4.5 Gs that the drivers are pulling through the corners, we're talking about a load of 7,000 pounds buried into the asphalt. To go fast in these cars, I got to tell you, you got to hold on tight. It's the epitome of a white knuckle ride.
And in fact, white knuckle may be an understatement today. Now, racing is always a combination of man and machine. To the machines first. Here's Jan Beekes.
Well, that's right, Paul. And you talked about the extreme track temperatures. Right now, 138 degrees. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about tires a lot today. But, you know, when people talk about tires this weekend, they keep talking about Goodyear. And that's because they fill 9 out of the top 10 starting spots. How'd they do it? They came up with a brand new tire that gave them more speed. But they did it in a different way than you might think. They built smaller tires. Well, how do smaller tires make you go faster? Remember, these tires stick out in the airstream. 60% of the aerodynamic drag comes off of these tires spinning out in the air. So by taking a little less than a ½ inch away from the diameter and from the width of the tire, making it smaller, it punches a smaller hole in the air. They run faster down the straightaway. So what has Firestone done in response? Firestone has also built smaller tires of their own, but they're not ready for this race. They'll be tested next week at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Gary?
Well, Jan, here at the head of this grid, I think you've got the ingredients for a sensational race just in the front row alone. You got Billy Boat down here on the pole, and you got Tony Stewart next to him. In the last 8 IRL events, these guys have been the guys who've paced the field. Billy, of course, won the night race here back in June, so he loves this racetrack. Next to him, Stewart, the defending series champion, already has 2 wins this year. He thinks he's got something to prove. But the story isn't just the front row. Consider, in the row right behind him, the Kelly Racing teammate, Scott Sharp, still alive in the championship in car number 8. In number 28 next to him, it's his teammate, Mark Dismore. And further back in the pack, do not forget Kenny Brack. He starts back in row number 5. Remember, he's looking for 4th straight win and a chance to clinch a championship today. Paul?
So 28 drivers are now strapped into their cars. They are set, ready to go. It's silent the moment. It won't be in just a very few seconds. Let's go down for that famous command.
And for those famous words in racing, would you please welcome former IndyCar competitor Jim McElree.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
So as now they begin to warm the engines here and are ready to roll out, we're going to go briefly to New York, and then we'll be right back here. So let's send you to our ABC Wide World of Sports studios in New York and Robin Roberts.
right, Paul, thank you very much, and we will get it right back out to you in just a moment. Let's bring everybody up to speed on what else is happening in the wide world of sports, beginning with the home run chase. And yes, Mark McGwire in his first at-bat as they're facing the Brewers. He goes long, 65 homers with 7 games left. In his third at-bat, he seemingly hit a home run, but a fan reached over the fence. It was ruled a ground rule double. As for Sammy Sosa, still on 63, he's 0 for 13 since hitting a 63rd home run on Wednesday. NL wildcard race, Sosa's Cubs tied with the Mets. The Cubs are in a rain delay with the Reds right now. The Mets are leading the Marlins 5-0 in the 8th. San Francisco will take on the Dodgers in just a moment. And as far as the AL wildcard race is concerned, going into today, the Angels trailing the Red Sox by 4.5. The Red Sox lead the White Sox right now 4-3 in the 7th. The Angels will take on Seattle later tonight. Fred McGriff hit a homer to tie the game in the bottom of the 9th. The Jays in Tampa Bay. It's now tied at 5 in the 10th inning. NASCAR. The MBNA Gold 400, and Mark Martin on the pole. The defending champion takes it yet again for his 7th win of the year. Jeff Gordon 2nd, Jeremy Mayfield 3rd. As for Jeff Gordon, he still, of course, leads in the Winston Cup standing. So that's what stands right now. We've got more racing for you. The Pep Boys Lone Star 500. So back to Texas Motor Speedway and Paul Page.
Back with the Pep Boys Indy Racing League. Here is the starting grid in the first row. Billy Boat is the pole sitter. Alongside is Tony Stewart, who won at Walt Disney World and New Hampshire this year. In row 2, Scott Sharp, the winner at Phoenix and Dover, and his teammate Mark Dismore alongside. Row 3, Jeff Ward, twice a runner-up this season, and Davey Hamilton, who's finished 2nd at Atlanta 3 weeks ago. In row 4, Scott Goodyear and Stefan Gregoire, who had a little trouble getting started but finally pulled away. In the 5th row, the Indy 500 champion Eddie Cheever and Kenny Breck, the points leader. In row 6, Dave Steele and Greg Ray, the runner-up here in June. In row 7, Raul Boisel and John Paul Jr. The 8th row, Marco Greco and Robbie Buell. In row 9, Robbie Unser, who finished 5th in this year's Indy 500, and Roberto Guerrero. In row 10, the 96 500 winner, Buddy Lazier, and 2-time Indy 500 winner, Ari Lyondike. In row 11, Steve Knapp and Buzz Calkins. The 12th row, Dr. Jack Miller and Sam Smith. Row 13, Brian Tyler and Donnie Beechler. The 14th row, Stan Waddles and Andy Mishner. Now, Ari Lyondike will be moving to the back of the field, Gary Gerald.
Well, he's had problems all weekend. They have changed engines repeatedly. They ran out of good, effective race engines. The Panther Racing team for Pennzoil and John Barnes came to him today with one of their power plants. So they've made 6 engine changes. He's at the back of the pack in his T-car. They're hoping now that they've got the power that can make him a contender. But he's got a long way to go from 28th to get up there and challenge.
Very quickly, here's how they distribute the points in the Indy Racing League, and here are the 11 drivers that are capable of taking the championship by the time this season is over. And we are ready now to roll for the green flag. Billy Boat on the pole position, Tony Stewart outside, Jim McElreath with the green flag, and here we go. To push just a little bit ahead. At the same time, Dismore comes in pursuit. Boat is falling backwards. He has done that before this year from the start. The pole sitter in the IRL has had a great deal of trouble making it around as the leader on the first lap. What we have instead is a side-by-side battle. As coming up from the second more, Mark Dismore looking strong. Stewart got him right at the line. Dismore falls back into second place. In third is Jeff Ward with a great move on the start as well. And now, looking back into fourth place, you can see that Scott Sharp is beginning to make a move forward. He's closing on the back of Ward. That's Stewart, the bright yellow car, up high, leading. Nice clean start for everybody. Look how tight they are here at the front. Top 5 right together.
I got to tell you, that start that Dismore got was just incredible. He's the second row. He went outside, took the 3 cars in front of him, got past Stewart on the backstretch, but Stewart wasn't going to have any of that and got back by him going on the front straight here. And now Stewart's leading again.
5th car in that line is Davey Hamilton in the Dayglow and black car. He has been very consistent this year, but has yet to score a victory. Second place, there's Dismore. Again, looking for his first win in IRL competition. Billy Boat, who started as the pole sitter, dropped all the way back into 6th place by the end of the second lap.
And Paul, I just talked with A.J. Foyt, and I said, are you trying to manage tires and use good judgment here, not use the tires early? And he said, we have no desire to lead this thing early on. So they're in a conservative mode right off the bat, with both slipping back from first to sixth.
Looking back from fifth place, Scott Sharp, as you see Stefan Gregoire come to the inside of Billy Boat and overhauled him very quickly. So Billy Boat, two questions. Is it a problem with that car, or is it a strategy given the hot, long day ahead?
It's really hard to say, Paul. I think he did something very similar.
Ari Lyondike, all of a sudden, Mike pulls off the pace.
That's not a good thing.
Engine.
They've had a lot of trouble this weekend, I got to tell you. No question. It's hard to see that. It's really difficult to see Ari running like that right now. Hopefully they'll get the thing fixed and get going again.
Looking back again from Scott Sharp, Stefan Gregoire, Sam Schmidt also heads for the pits at this time. No indication as why. We'll keep you up to date on that. Fight is for second place. Dismore and Hamilton, who has now moved up to third.
The report on Sam Schmidt is that he lost power. That's why he's now down on pit road.
So keep track of that for us, Jan Vikas. Hamilton suddenly looking very racy. We haven't seen him this aggressive early on.
Now, it's not usually Davy's style to get going right at the beginning. He's usually very, very heady and very smart, and not that he's not being that now, but I'd have to say he's being a little bit more aggressive on this start at the beginning of this race than he usually is, and that's a good sign, I got to say.
And here comes Stefan Gregoire as he tries to the inside of Scott Sharp. Looking back from Sharp once again. 8 laps complete, 208. The scheduled distance, 312 miles, 500 kilometers.
What I was saying about Boat, Paul, was we saw in Colorado was one race in particular where he did the same drop back move at the beginning of the race, but he was right in the mix at the end. And you know what they say. I mean, it's the last lap that counts, not the first. So I certainly wouldn't count Billy out. He's staying in the mix there.
And Paul, we can give you a quick update on Ari Lyondike as he tried to limp. On the radio, he said, I don't think I can make it back around. They don't know, the crew doesn't know for sure the problem. They suspect it may be fuel pump related.
You got a shot of Tony Stewart, the leader, and then the rest of the field following him through on the backstretch. Ari Lyondike's crew has now made the long run up to the end of the pits to retrieve that car. You have to assume if they made that run that he's given them some information on the radio that tells them it was worth making.
Definitely. He was right about just making it back into the pits. He got right in there. His guys are down there pushing him, and I'm sure they'll be in the pits to get working on the thing. But it's a real shame to see that Radio Shack car not out there running right now.
The bright yellow car is Jeff Ward. He is now beginning to pressure Davey Hamilton, and that is a battle, of course, for third place. Stewart, the leader, is now pulled out a pit from second place Mark Dismore. Again, looking back from Sharp, that's Gregoire. No challenge here. Sam Schmidt in the pits. They said they had a power problem. What is it, Jan?
They don't know exactly what that problem is, Paul. They tried to leave a couple of times, Sam Schmidt did, and he kept killing the engine. It had a very bad misfire. Now they're going to take that. Actually, now they're choosing, and you may see that Ari Lyondike is being pushed by as well. So we have two engine-related problems, and it appears as though Sam Schmidt's going to go behind the wall.
And at the same time, you see Ari Lyondike's crew in this very hot Texas day having to push his car almost the full length of the pits. Now, Tony Stewart has led all 10 IRL races thus far this year, and 20 of the 23 races in the IRL history, as Stefan Gregoire is able to move out and around Hamilton, and Greg Ray has moved from 12th to 8th.
Greg's on the move. There's no question about that.
The Pep Boys Lone Star 500. This ABC Sports presentation brought to you by Pep Boys is the official sponsor of the Indy Racing League. Pennzoil, specially formulated for today's stop-and-go driving. Stop, go, Pennzoil. And Firestone, America's tire since 1900.
Back at the Pep Boys Lone Star 500 at Texas Motor Speedway, we get you up to speed. Just after we left you, Stefan Gregoire lost it, but this is a little further back with Greg Ray, who had to duck a tire and ran into the back of Billy Boat just as the yellow was coming out. Ray came into the pits, as did Stefan Gregoire. Let's go to Gary.
What happened here with this last one?
Well, thanks to John Barnes from Pensol Racing, you know, they loaned us a motor, which was great because we had none left. And the engine ran good at the start, but fuel pump drive snapped and had no fuel pressure anymore, and basically the car shut off, which was too bad. I moved up a few spots, still getting into a rhythm, basically. It's too bad we've had all these troubles. It's been quite a weekend.
I know early in the weekend you were frustrated. You were talking about potentially next year, possible retirement word has cropped up. Any thoughts about 1999 for IRL Indycar?
Well, when you go through rough times like this, it doesn't make it easier to say, what am I going to do in the future? So we've had, not just this weekend, but the whole year, quite a rough year. And basically, I'm doing it for the fun right now, and it has to be fun. And but it's still quite a ways away for me to make a decision on what I'm going to do next year.
All right, we look forward to whatever decision you make. Thank you, Ari.
Thank you.
And Paul, a couple of quick updates relating first to Billy Boat. His car was damaged with contact, apparently with Greg Ray, on the rear wing. They brought him into the pits. They changed tires. They went from the softer option tire on the right side to the harder primary tire on the right side. Davey Hamilton, just prior to the yellow, was forced to make a pit stop. He had shredded a rear tire. Don't know if he got into debris or not. They made the change, got him back out. Let's go to Jan.
Well, Greg Ray, of course, was involved when he got into the back of Billy Boat. He remains in the car, and they have changed the nose cone with Sam Schmidt. So we're going to have a different looking nose while they now try and repair the right front suspension of this car. Obviously, a win is gone for Greg Ray, but there still are valuable points that are available. Remember, he is the hometown hero. Paul?
Hopefully that gets you totally up to speed. We are back to green flag racing on the restart. Tony Stewart dropped well back. In fact, Stan Waddles was sitting in the middle of a crowd, and they had to spread out and go around him. So now with 28 laps run in this race, look at all the changes that we have had in the top of the order with Dismore, now the leader of the race, and those little bullets in yellow on the right side indicate changes that have occurred during this run. This is the second place car. Scott Sharp in third place is Jeff Ward. Fourth is Kenny Breck. So Breck coming forward, looking for that championship. And Tony Stewart now sits back in fifth place. Greg Ray, of course, he got into the back of Boat's car. That created problems for both he and Boat, and we'll have to keep track of both of those cars for you as well. Of the field, Mark Dismore. Eddie Cheever, the Indy 500 champion, has just pulled onto pit road as well.
Once again, I got to say, Dismore just jumped out like a rocket on that restart. The first start of the race, he did the same darn thing, and I mean, he is hooked up on cold tires. There's no question about it. But Sharp is he's staying pretty good with him too. So right now the Kelly cars are 1-2, and they're looking pretty strong.
Yeah, on board with Scott Sharp, the teammate to Mark Dismore. Remember, Dismore has actually, his restarts all this year have been pretty impressive. And that's all a matter of pacing your way back to the green, isn't it? It really starts over on the backstretch.
No question. And being able to get with the program on the cold tires like he's doing is pretty impressive nonetheless.
Tony Stewart just comes around Kenny Breck, picks up fourth place. So Stewart now, after a terrible restart, tries to come forward. Now that's Buddy Lazier, the yellow and purple car, that begins to close. He's come up from 19th to come up here and do battle at the front of the field. Now in 6th place and trying to close on Kenny Breck.
And he is all over Breck. He's all over his tail, and he's going to be looking high and low.
There is one interesting offering that they have here as we go back to the front of the field. Scott beginning to close on the leader of the race. They call it, look at him skate. Look at Dismore skate just a little bit as he headed into that corner. They call this deal the Texas two-step. Remember, there have been 2 races here this year. One earlier and this one here today for the Pep Boys Indy Racing League. And they're going to total up the points, and the driver that has scored the most points at the end of this race will get an extra $100,000. They call that the Texas two-step. I call it a lot of bucks.
A lot of money. Nice little program that Texas Speedway put up.
So now, while the battle is at the front of the field, once again, Sam Schmidt, we mentioned that he was out of power. Jan Beekes is with him.
He certainly was out of power. We know that part of his car is out there on the racetrack on Greg Ray's car. But what happened to your engine? What failed?
It just dropped a valve. I mean, it's pretty disappointing right from the start. It
practice. We've had a car to run flat out here all day long, and we just went from the start past 3 cars in the first 2 laps, and going forward, turning into one, it just lost power like it hit the limiter. It just never came back and has oil in the left bank, so it dropped a valve, and pretty disheartening for the team. But
is this heat going to be a factor as far as engine reliability?
I don't think so. You know, we're shocked because it's the same motor. We didn't change motors, same motor we ran all weekend, so I don't think it had anything to do with the heat. It's just a freak occurrence.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Don.
Paul?
And what about the situation of Tony Stewart? Was the leader as we came back to green, fell back to 4th, Gary Gerald?
Paul, it was simply a situation where Tony Stewart missed the shift. Oh, big crash right in front of us.
On the front stretch. Absolutely. Up against the wall and bringing out the yellow. Came onto the second dogleg. This track is interesting. 4 turns and then a double dogleg, bringing them down to the front stretch of the track.
I'm not so sure he didn't lose a tire when he was coming by the kink here. Right past us, it looked like something let go on the straight line.
Yeah, and Mike, this is Gary down here in the pits. It was right in front of us, and we heard the tremendous boom, and that was before any impact with the wall. I think you're spot on. I think he had a tire let go big time.
Dispatch to turn 1. Generally, when they do let go, that's the sequence of events. Dave Steele in the 43 car was running in 7th place, and he is the 2nd driver this weekend for Panther Racing. That's Jim Harbaugh's team, as a teammate to Scott Goodyear. And obviously now that car is done for the day.
Big disappointment for Dave.
Tire let go, catches the wall with the right side.
Clean up 3, dispatch to the front straightaway.
And a lot of debris out there.
Pretty hard to do much once that tire lets go like it did, and he was pretty much a passenger if that thing let go.
But Mike, does that lead us to what we were talking about in terms of attrition?
Right on the hash white line here, Johnny.
You know, typically you don't see tires blowing like that. I think the engine situation right now has definitely been an issue, and I think a lot of that has to do with the repaving of this track and the fact that you cannot give these engines a break whatsoever. I mean, there's so much grip out there, and you know, it does play havoc on the tires a bit, but the engines are struggling a bit too.
So Dave Steele, he's in the ambulance. He'll go back for a mandatory medical check at the emergency center. And we are under yellow, 2nd time of the day. Back at the Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth for the Pep Boys Lone Star 500. After 47 laps complete, we are ready to go back to green flag racing. Of course, when the yellow came out, immediately most of the front runners decided it was time to come into the pits. That gives the lead to the 30 car of Raul Boisel. Now he's actually sitting back 2 cars in the lineup. So keep an eye on Boisel as we come back to the green flag once again. Boisel immediately moves on Buell and comes around Robbie Buell just that quick. Remember the 2nd car here. There it is, the 30 car. That's the leader of the race. Nice position to be in at this point. Most of the leaders are back in the field as a result of coming in for pit stops under the yellow. Remember that Boisel pitted under that first yellow on the 20th lap. We're now on lap 49. Jan Beekes.
Dave Steele thankfully has left the medical center, and Dave, was it a tire that went down? Did you know which one?
I think it might have been a right rear tire went down. We were just, you know, had a pretty decent run going, and actually at first I thought somebody actually ran into the back of me down the front straightaway. Something went flying by my head, and the car just turned around on me. So, you know, hopefully these guys will invite me back, maybe run again. I got to thank Pennzoil, Dorcel, Mannheim Auctions, and most of all my crew. They did a really good job getting the car ready for me, and you know, I'm just sorry for those guys mainly.
Okay, well, I know they were impressed with your run. Thanks.
And you saw it, poor Raul in just those few seconds got overhauled, and overhauled big time as Scott Sharp came down on top of him, and Tony Stewart is now coming to the outside as you look back from Scott Sharp's car onto the backstretch. Stewart challenging at the front of the field. Raul Boisel, and following him, by the way, coming back to the green flag with a nice run, starting last place race. 28th was Andy Mister. Again, the pit stop strategy plays well for him, but it's nice to be able to call a name like that up in the front. Back from Sharp. Stewart's leader of the race, but here comes Sharp again. Whoa, look how tight that one gets.
They're definitely slicing and dicing out there today. No question about it.
You know what I don't understand is, given this temperature, why you would do that.
It's definitely early in the race, and it is hard to understand, but I'll tell you, these guys aren't going to let any grass grow under their feet today. They're on it.
Sharp is in trouble. He started slowing over on the front stretch.
That's not a good sign.
It worsens on the back stretch. He's down on the pit road, so he takes the lead of the race for seconds, and then Stewart takes it from him, and then suddenly Sharp onto the pit road. So there's the new leader, Tony Stewart, leader once again, with Jeff Ward, great motocross champion, running about 200 yards back in second place. At 200 miles an hour, 200 yards, about 1.8 seconds. That's all.
That's it.
Sharp back out again. So Sharp in and out quickly. Makes you wonder what that was. He was in the pits for a mere 9.3 seconds.
And Paul, the reason was that he had a right rear tire going down. Of course, they have sensors on these wheels, and they got the indication in the pits. And actually, Mark Dismore behind us is now in the pits as well. So both of the Kelly cars on pit road, and of course, and we found it. Here is the puncture. If you have a shot of that, there is the puncture that he picked up on the right rear tire, and the same thing could have happened to him that happened to Steele if they didn't catch it on the telemetry.
Well, and apparently concerned with that, you also saw Mark Dismore. There he is now, in and out of the pits. So we'll check on that and find out why that pass came in. Tony Stewart has led 33 laps, Mark Dismore 14, Raul Boisel 8, Jeff Ward 1, and Scott Sharp 1. Off of 2 onto the backstretch. Track here, Texas Motor Speedway, seats 150,000. They were expecting 60,000 in attendance for this race, and they did, in fact, start coming in the morning. The infield camping was terrific. We camped there last night. A lot of folks there. So it's Stewart, Ward, John Paul Jr., then Beechler. And Beechler is now challenged by Buddy Lazier.
Lazier definitely looks like he's got things hooked up right now. Early on in the race, he was struggling a little bit, but I think he's finding his rhythm now, and he's definitely on the move. No question about it.
Again, the question still here at Texas Motor Speedway is heat. It's 100 plus out there, and the Pep Boys Lone Star 500 is running under that heat.
You're watching the Pep Boys Lone Star 500 on ABC.
Let's get you up to speed in the Pep Boys Lone Star 500. I'm Paul Page with Mike Groff. Scott Sharp was running in the front, and then in turn 3, the car got loose. He got into the wall, got in heavy. The good news is he's not injured as a result of this. Mike Groff?
He definitely got that big wiggle and the big loose, and obviously the net result was going in the wall, and it's too bad for Scott because he was on a mission. He was right there in the front, and that's not a good thing. You can see right there, he just goes way loose. Pretty hard to do anything about that.
And Tony Stewart had to jump all over the brakes to get slowed down before that accident. So there's the way the accident that has brought out the yellow that we are under, third of the race. So that gets you up to speed to the moment. And that makes Jeff Ward now the leader of the race. So let's check in very quickly with the pits as we rejoin the race at 77 laps. We start with Jan Beekes.
Yeah, so first of all, for Scott Sharp, the first thing you would think of, did the tire go down? Check with the crew, and they said no, the tire pressures remain constant. And just like Mike Ross said, the car just stepped out on Scott Sharp. Gary?
Quick word with Scott Goodyear. What happened, Scott? We saw them pushing you all the way back.
Well, obviously we went backwards at the very beginning. We didn't have a very good race car, but we were making it good in the pit stops. Even though we were down a lap, we weren't going to win. We were going to get some points, and we lost all the drive, and every gear just I went to leave, and it went about 5 or 6 feet, and that was about it. We're not sure what happened yet, but the guys in the team did a great job all year, and we thought we would have a run at the championship, but now we'll go to Vegas with no hope. Thank you.
Well, Jeff Ward gets a nice restart, but he is already under pressure from Mark Dismore, who jumped around John Paul Jr. Now at the front of the field, Dismore battles. Tony Stewart slows down. Suddenly, Tony Stewart, who has led 51 laps of this run, slows down. Boy, it changes constantly. It's hard to get a grip on this race.
It definitely is. Tony was in the pits under yellow, and I thought that was a pretty good strategy. Thought they get everything sorted out, made some changes, went back out, and this is what he got. Really
John Paul Jr. as he comes down under Ward, and John Paul takes the lead of the race. This is one of the most unique sponsorships in all of racing. He's sponsored by Vision Air, which is an executive jet aircraft. And, you know, think of that. It's not the world's broadest audience, but here they are sitting on that car. Tony Stewart in the pits. They fall on the car.
It's a blown motor, Paul.
Oh.
Larry Curry just ripped off his headset. He went almost running away from the pit, just waving everybody off. I grabbed him. He said, it's just the motor. It's just the motor. Stewart still sits in the cockpit, but I don't think there's any way.
They have had motor problems this year. Look at this battle for second place right now. Jeff Ward is being challenged by Raul Boisel. Jan Beekes?
Yes, Scott Sharp has come from the medical center. The good news is you're okay. Why'd the car step out?
Well, David Cripps, my engineer, just got back from Goodyear, and like I thought, we cut another tire. So I don't know what happened, but we cut 2 tires. The first one, luckily, the Delphi team caught, and we were able to come in and change, and this one is just gone.
Again, this is just from debris on the racetrack from the previous accidents?
It must be, because you know, you're hardly running that long, and all of a sudden we're only probably running 10 laps. To pick it up and cut it that quick, it must just be the track's too dirty.
And of course, guys, the telemetry did not tell us that, because David Cribbs told us earlier he thought the pressure was okay, but now we find out it wasn't.
I'll tell you, a cut tire, that's pretty hard for any tire manufacturer to overcome. I mean, that's just one of those situations. I think the track is really, really dirty right now. Yes, this track is very hard on tires, but a cut tire, hey.
Yellow flag comes out. You saw Sonny Meyer, the engine man, leaning over Tony Stewart's engine. 4th time that they've had a DNF this year. There is Tony Stewart coming over the wall. This yellow is not for an incident on the racetrack.
We've got debris directly across from fire truck 1.
And there you hear from the race control, it's debris, and of course at 200 plus miles an hour, 225 mile an hour average,
Car 11
the
comes
Philly boat. You don't want anything, not even the smallest washer lane on
You
that.
don't want anything, believe me.
We got a little bit of
The leader of the race is this man, John Paul Jr. He led 39 laps at the Indianapolis 500. The debris they're now reporting is coming off of Billy Boat.
Fire truck 1 can also see debris on the main straightaway.
How much does it hurt?
Right front.
Well, shit, anytime you get away $1 million, it hurts. Goddamn, we had the fastest car here all day, just like we have all weekend. And it hurts when it's week in and week out. I mean, there's nobody's doing anything wrong. I mean, all my guys have been working 120%. It's just, you wonder how much of this you can take.
Now, you talk about having your character tested. This young man who wanted so badly leave this series as a 2-time champion is not going to be able to do it, it appears.
His expression says everything. Billy Boat came into the pits right back out. Race control was reporting that the debris came off of Billy Boat's car. Now remember, he was hit in the right rear by Greg Ray early on. There's race control. And we have 86 laps into the record book in the Pep Boys Lone Star 500.
South end.
This is Paul Page with Mike Croft back at the Pep Boys Lone Star 500, Texas Motor Speedway, Fort Worth, Texas. 91 laps of the 208 are complete with pit stops once again under the yellow. Look at how the order changes. Raul Boisel is the leader of the race. There he is, the 30 car. And right behind him is Andy Michener, followed by Robbie Unser. So a major change up at the front of the field. That blue car, that's Robbie Buell. He's trying to get back into this fight. He's a lap behind the lead, currently running in 12th. Everybody tight into 3. Down on the inside, you can see the 14 car. It's orange and predominantly white. That's Kenny Breck. He's the man in the championship fight. We told you at starting that he had to win this race if he wanted to take a championship away. He's currently in 6th place, but the other thing we told you was that key contenders would have to fall out. Stewart, Sharp, Goodyear, Gregoire, Lyondike, they have all fallen out. So Kenny Breck may be on game plan.
He's kind of going his way right now. He's definitely sitting there hovering in 8th place right now, and I think he's keeping in the mix.
Bobby Hunter currently runs in 3rd, bright yellow car. Here comes Bosell. Down to the inside, Bosell gets him. Looks like Robbie really backpedaled heavily right there.
He definitely did. I think he just caught a little bit of bad air across the front there, and that'll do it at a place like this. I mean, this place is such a aerodynamic track, and you lose that front just a little bit, and it hurts you.
Keeping track, too, of course, Roberto Guerrero. He is in there as well. He's the Earl Supply bright yellow car at the back, the blue and yellow. That, of course, is Michener. Also, when all the competitors have gone away, or at least a good portion of them, all of our onboard cameras have also been involved in incidents or exploration here today. So we're back to the old style. Keep an eye on Roberto Guerrero, that bright yellow car. Good story here, because most of the engines here are Oldsmobile Aurora. That's an Infinity.
Well, in fact, Paul, there's actually 2 Infinity cars on the racetrack. Dr. Jack Miller is running the other car. But I got to say, Roberto has been hanging tough all day. He qualified well. His speeds have been good. His lap times during the race. I mean, he is definitely in the hunt. It's good to see that Infinity running the way it is. They're definitely making progress.
Oh, man, look at Roberto Guerrero as he fights for 2nd place with Andy Michener. And here is Raul Boisel up at the front of the field, working his way in and out of traffic. And Guerrero, Gary Gerald.
Paul, a lot of concern, as you've indicated, about right rear tires, particularly for the Goodyear runners. A.J. Foyt's drivers are on Goodyears. Billy Boat had that incident where our right rear came apart. We talked with one of the Goodyear engineers, and he said, we think that the problem is the combination of temperature and building air pressure on the right rear, and it's putting too much of a load on the shoulder of the right rear tire. We've seen 2 on Hamilton, 1 on Billy Boat, and we had the 1 incident involving David Steele, all with right rear tires. So a lot of consternation down here. Foyt just telling Billy Boat moments ago that they may have to bring him back in a few laps to once again change the right rear. Let's go to Jan.
Well, Gary, an update on Raul Boisel, our leader. We checked with the crew, and everything obviously is going according to plan. He took advantage of some different pit strategy, and they say he can run a full 30 laps from now before he has to come onto pit road. So if they are lucky enough to catch a caution between now and then, that strategy will certainly pay off.
Raul Boisel, the 30 car, he's the leader. Roberto Guerrero, there he is, that blue car just behind him, number 23. Then comes Andy Michener. Then Ward and Lazier.
I think I'd like to say Michener's out there running a real strong 3rd, really staying in the mix, staying in the hunt, not really giving anything up to leaders right now, and it's very good to see. I mean, there's not too many Riley and Scotts out there. I think there's two chassis out there running, and he's doing a phenomenal job today.
Roberto Guerrero, the 23 car, has had an up and down season. In fact, a career that has been up and down the last several years, but you won't find a nicer racer on the circuit. Fast, clean, and away from the track as pleasant as they come.
It's good to see Roberto land with a good ride. You know, this Cobb team, I think, has come a long way. They've had some good guys in the car from the get-go, but I think the team hadn't been quite up to speed, and I think right around the time Roberto showed up, they started making some good changes, and the Infinity engines come alive, and it could be a force to be reckoned with in the future, and Roberto's doing a great job.
Working now on the 105th lap of 208. That, of course, means that we now have an official race into the record book, should it rain. I don't think there's rain within 400 miles of Fort Worth, Texas right now.
I see clouds, but I don't think it's going to rain, Paul.
We saw a temperature a little bit earlier of 103 degrees down in the pits. Your exclusive home for primetime NFL tonight live at 8:15 Eastern on ESPN. Philadelphia will take on Arizona. And then on Monday night on ABC Sports, it's Monday Night Football. Live at its new time, that's 8 o'clock Eastern. Dallas faces the New York Giants. Dismore slowed with a problem. Back to the leader of the race, Raul Boisel. Second dark blue car, one position back from him, because in the midst of all this is Robbie Buell. That's Buell, the lighter blue car. There's Guerrero. We got a car over in the wall, and it's Billy Boat, the pole sitter.
Turn the street, stay high, stay high. To the flat. He slid down to the flat. Looked like a mild contact.
So the fifth yellow of the day.
Car 11, Billy Boat. 11, Billy Boat.
Well, they were talking in the pit, at least, Mike, about bringing Billy Boat in.
They were, and I'm sure it was a tire-related issue. Once again, that was a very unusual place to hit the wall. You can see, or we can see from where we're sitting, a tire mark in the straight line, setting up for turn 3 he hit, and then he went up against, stayed up against the wall. So very, very, very unusual.
Max, let the field pass you, and I need you up high.
So there's the marks on the wall from Billy Boat. Really more of a brush than a truly hard impact, and as Mike Croft says, in a very strange area. You were talking about changing it. Here it is, just at the tail end, just brush on the wall, but look at the left rear.
Something definitely came apart. I would have to think that that has something to do with that earlier contact that Billy had with Greg Ray. I think Greg Ray ran in the back of him in that one accident, and that could be the toll right there.
So you're suggesting more a suspension breakage getting into the tire, because certainly that tire has been changed.
It certainly looked that way, because obviously the right rear was flat when he was against the wall, but you could see that left rear tire, oscillating back and forth like it was broken. The suspension was broken. So, and that's exactly, ironically enough, where Greg Ray ran.
So add Billy Boat named to that list of major contenders that have fallen by the wayside. Gary?
Paul, we're down here with A.J. Foyt talking with Tommy LeMans. He's worried about two drivers. Did you talk to Billy, A.J.?
Yeah, he's okay. I mean, it's a shame that when you talk to organizations, say we got a problem before we ever get here, and we've tested all year for them. I didn't recommend this tire. I didn't like this tire, and it really makes me disgusted.
Now, do you think this was tire related again on that right rear?
I know it was. It blew out. I mean, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm too damn disgusted.
Well, there's the Texan at his volatile best.
And the hulk of tires all around the track. A.J. Foyt, his manager Tommy LeMans, trying to get his attention to say, A.J., we've still got another car in this race, Kenny Breck, and he's 9th. Well, back at the Pep Boys Lone Star 500, Texas Motor Speedway with the Pep Boys IRL. He may be smiling even bigger than we just saw. In the 15 car, Andy Michener is the leader of the race in the Pep Boys race summary. Michener leads 129 miles an hour, the average. That's because we've had considerable yellow here today. 7 different leaders, though, 9 different changes, and some fairly critical people out of the race, including names like Stewart, Sharp, Goodyear, Gregoire, Lyondike, Billy Boat. Those are the key contenders in the points fight. As the green flag comes out, that's Michener's second. First in that line is Robbie Buell, who is trying desperately not to go under, but look at Buddy Lazier. Buddy Lazier from second place comes up on the high side, takes the lead of the race. Buddy Lazier has the lead. Michener's caught up behind Robbie Buell, and now Lazier is going to disappear.
So Lazier just got an incredible run on the field there, and you can see obviously now he's just taken away. He's taking advantage of that.
And John Paul Jr. also makes his move. He comes around Michener. Now, is that an experience issue on a restart like that?
It could be. I mean, John Paul's a guy that's got a lot of miles under his belt, and he always has been good on restarts. And as you can see, that last restart, I mean, he's no exception. He's doing good here.
Now, it could be something wrong with Michener. Looks like he's slowing substantially now. Coming up behind him is Stan Waddles in the Metro car. He'll split to the inside. Davey Hamilton will split to the outside. Now it's Hamilton and Michener. The black car is Waddles.
The unfortunate thing for Hamilton is he's had a great race car all day. The only problem is he's been in the pits 4 or 5 times at least. And that's really hurting him. He's got a great race car, though. He's running great lap speeds all day.
backstretch, and it got A.J. Foyt seriously into conversation with the tire engineers. Gary?
Billy Boat is back from the medical center. They're working on the car down here, but tremendous amount of damage. First, how are you feeling, considering, of course, you had that big accident early this season?
I'm feeling fine, you know. We just lost a tire coming off the corner, spun down the back straight away, you know, never hit real hard at any one point, so, you know, that was lucky, but pretty much hit most of the corners, so, you know, a little bit of damage to pretty much everywhere.
Now, you had a problem with the right rear earlier. How much were you trying to baby it, and can you really do anything about it at race pace?
Well, actually, I lost the right front early and saved it, and then I don't know why we lost the right rear. I really don't.
Okay, thanks, Billy.
All right.
Jan?
Well, when you talked about the conversations between A.J. Foyt and the Goodyear engineers, I can tell you what they were discussing. Just like Gary Gerald had said earlier, that they believe with 144-degree track temperature that the pressures are just getting too high. So now they can't do a thing about Billy Boat. They have to work with Kenny Breck, trying to bring those pressures down, because again, it is the inside shoulder of the right rear tire that gives up first, and then of course if the inside shoulder goes, it affects the outside shoulder. And unfortunately, there's not a Goodyear spokesperson that is willing to get on camera, but that is the technical aspect of what's happening with the tires.
So with the tires, a matter of question, Robbie Buell's trying to stay up with the race. He's the John Manville car right in the middle of that sandwich between the leader of the race, Buddy Lazier, the Delta Fawcett car, and the Visionaire car of John Paul Jr., currently running in second place. Jeff Ward sits back some distance in third, followed by Robbie Unser and Roberto Guerrero.
Okay, Robbie's certainly trying to get his lap back. He went one lap down, and it's unfortunate for him because his car really is working well. And you can see he's side and side there with Buddy. I mean, that's awesome right there.
For Buell, it's trying to stay in the fight battle. For Buddy Lazier, it's the lead of the race. Now John Paul Jr. comes in to work on the leader. John Paul Jr., one of those drivers, you really can never count him out. If he's there and he has the car, you're in trouble.
No, he's definitely a Charger, there's no doubt. And he's got, like I said earlier, he's got a ton of miles under his belt, and he stands on the gas.
127 laps. 208 the scheduled distance.
And it looks like Buddy caught a second win there as he tries to go under Buell. Under Buell, he's past Buell.
Track temperature sounds like the lap count, 103 degrees.
It's getting up there.
Listening to the spotters on the two-way radio as they clear their cars around this 1.5-mile track at Texas Motor Speedway. So at the front of the field, it's Buddy Lazier, but John Paul Jr. is working very hard on the leader. Jeff Ward sits in third. We'll be back.
The Pep Boys Lone Star 500. This ABC Sports presentation brought to you by Pep Boys is the official sponsor of the Indy Racing League. New Advil Liquid Gels, pain relief at the speed of liquid. And Just for Men, the leader in men's hair coloring, blends away gray in 5 minutes.
And all of a sudden, Buddy Lazier comes onto the pit road. He didn't get him on the racetrack, but he gets him now with this stop of Lazier. John Paul Jr. picks up the lead.
It's looking like a pretty routine stop there.
And it is, again, a suspected possible tire going down. They're putting sticker Goodyear tires. And, of course, when you put sticker tires on, as you know, Mike, sometimes that can cause you difficulty. It was under 11 seconds, but, again, sticker tires may or may not be the answer.
You're right about that, Jan. I think a place like this, guys generally try to run a scrubbed set of tires because they get that first heat cycle in, and it gives a little more duration to the tire for the race, and I think putting a set of stickers on, there's a chance of blistering the tires even easier.
So John Paul Jr. picks up the lead. Jeff Ward comes into the pits as well. He's been up in the front of this fight. In fact, he's been there most of the day.
And what I was going to say also, Mike, when you were talking about heat cycles on tires, Firestone had been very concerned.
Whoa! Looks like Marco Greco. Marco Greco and a second car into the wall. Parts everywhere.
Car 5, that was a heavy impact, Hank. And we got car 30. Car 5 clear. Truck 2 is ready.
You guys getting out of cars and throwing steering wheels. So
ambulance 2, fire truck 2, dispatch now. Clean up
the other car.
Fire truck 1, dispatch now.
Versus the 98.
Ambulance 1, dispatch now.
And Marco Greco, the real concern is with Marco.
Spin up one, Rob.
Donnie Beechler walks over to the edge of the track. He's obviously okay, just kind of rolled out of the car. But Marco Greco, Dave Brown, and the safety team, they're all right there.
1-8 car drivers coming out.
And also Steve Knapp. So 3 cars in this situation. That's a little further down the track.
Cleanup 1 is high. Turn 1.
So on the 134th lap, it brings out the yellow. Here it is, Mike.
That's definitely the aftermath right there. They've already hit the wall, obviously, and it doesn't look good. I mean, that's a definite heavy impact. It's good to see the guys, like I said, when the cars came to stop throwing wheels and kind of moving.
We see this.
Hold your line low all the way around.
You can see a couple other cars behind. I think Steve Knapp was one of them. Collected some debris, and you can see Knapp's car. He had lost his steering in the aftermath and just sort of coasted down and tapped the infield wall, which wasn't anything either.
And we put another car into it now that we saw there, Raul Boisel.
That's unfortunate. He was running well.
He was having a great day. He's out of the car.
Clean up 3, dispatch to turn 1.
You saw the 3 cars. Marco Greco's car, the key in all of that, the bright red car sliding backwards as the Donnie Beechler car gets caught and trapped up against the wall. Steve Knapp goes a little further on. Then you saw the last replay, almost independent of that, maybe hit some debris or something, was Raul Boisel. So the leader is still John Paul Jr., and now he has the advantage of a yellow. And Lazier and Ward, well, they both lost a lap because they pitted just before that incident.
That hurt. This race has been that way all day. You know, it's really hard to get a sense of you know, where guys are, you know, and with that last sequence there. I mean, everybody's just got their own thing going on, and it's hard to figure out who's up and who's down.
Like we're watching the crew for Jonathan Bird, who came over to say it's so much better to be out in front. He's enjoying the moment. He applauds a 13.5-second stop.
As well he should. But Roberto Guerrero takes over the lead of the race under the yellow. There he is in the 23 car. So much change here throughout the middle run of this race, in a race that it's been very difficult to get a handle on. And we had indicated that Kenny Breck needed contenders to fall out. They continue to do so at the Pep Boys Lone Star 500. Back at the Pep Boys Lone Star 500, let's get you up to speed. Robbie Buell got back on the leader lap in 4th, and then it looked like he ran out of fuel, Gary.
John, it looked like you got a tremendous break in terms of this yellow, and then new misfortune. Is he out of fuel?
Yeah, we wanted to stay out long enough to be sure we didn't have any debris in the tire, because we had one cut tire already today, which put us down to first place. But I guess if I had a computer, I'd throw it right now, because, you know, the computer says we got plenty of fuel, but we're sitting out there.
Thank you.
Yep.
So that gets you up to speed. Robbie Unser becomes the leader of the race. Young Robbie out in front of this field and ahead of John Paul Jr. and Roberto Guerrero. Now that accident coming off at 2, it looked very, very serious, but fortunately a couple of drivers were able to walk away right away. And Gary Gerald was able to catch up with them almost immediately.
Both released from medical, both okay. What happened, Steve?
Donnie Beechler is coming out of the pit, getting up to speed at the bottom of the track like he's supposed to, and Greco just drives right over the front of his car. I saw Greco doing stuff all day long out there, He did the same thing to Andy Michner going into turn 3. I've just had it with the guy. I hope the IRL does something with him.
Very strong emotion from Steve Knapp. Donnie Beechler, obviously you were doing everything he said you're supposed to be doing in that situation. You felt you were protected?
Well, we were on the bottom, and I mean, I seen Marco coming in my mirror on the outside, so you naturally hold my line, and well, then he come down and just, I T-boned him as he came down. We both went into the wall, so it's unfortunate because it tore up some good race cars.
Just happy you're all right. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry.
As we're ready to come back to green with Robbie Unser the lead, Marco Greco, and Lazier makes his move, gets his lap back. And he does it. Robbie going to have to play it very carefully. I want to say Marco Greco, they think he may have a concussion. They're airlifting him to Parkland Hospital in Dallas, but he was alert and awake as he came into the emergency care center here.
And that's definitely good news.
Jan Beekes.
Well, Paul, in that last accident, you've talked about debris. Well, check out this debris. This is a half shaft that came off one of the cars. It actually went into the radiator of Stan Waddell's car. He made a pit stop. They pulled this heavy axle out from his radiator, and believe it or not, he's back on the track running in 9th spot. So sometimes debris, I mean, this certainly could definitely hurt a driver if it got in the cockpit, but for some reason, it did not damage Stan Waddell's car, and he's still running.
There's the second place car. That's John Paul Jr. He's closing on the battle up at the front, which is Jeff Ward trying to find his way back onto the lead lap as well.
It was really unfortunate for Ward. He definitely was on the lead lap, and because of the pit sequence, he came in under green right before it went yellow, along with Buddy Lazier, and these guys went a lap down, and that was really unfortunate for both of them. I mean, they're going to work harder to get that lap back, obviously, and Lazier's on his way right now.
Here's an interesting situation in Robbie Unser, though he comes from a great legacy, a new driver in this series, the Pep Boys IRL. What is his best play at this point? He should just let those go and not race with anybody. His problem's right behind him and closing fast.
Yeah, tell him that, Paul. I mean, he's out there getting pretty racy right now. You know, leading the race, obviously, that's a great thing. And, you know, he's an Unser. I mean, he's out there racing, and I think it's the first Pep Boy IRL race that he's led, and you know, that's great. He's had some good runs before, but this is definitely one of the better ones.
I was going to say, I'm not going to tell any Unser anything. I tried that for years with Bobby. So here are the two trying to get back into this fight, and right behind them is the fight for the lead between Robbie Unser and John Paul Jr. There it is, Robbie Unser, yellow and blue. John Paul Jr., the red and white colors of Jonathan Bird's racing stable.
I got to say, Robbie's definitely holding his own. I'm watching the lap speeds, and you know he's running right at 2:18, which is really the best he's run all day, and he's going to get past.
And now look at this. Look down low there. You bet. That is the green car. Andy Michner just may have had an engine let go. You saw for a second, though, Billy Boat came back into the race 43 laps behind the lead. There is the 11 car right now. Now, he's in that Texas two-step situation. He's looking for $100,000. He may be 19th now, but, boy, every point's going to count for that.
I was going to say, talk about persistence. That's one thing, but 100 grand's another, and that's certainly why he's staying out there.
We stay green despite the problem with Andy Michner, and he rolls to a stop up in turn 4, back to the lead of the race. 159 laps complete.
Yellow, yellow.
And the yellow finally comes out. You heard Mel Harder in race control call it.
Car 15 at pit in.
And they are calling it because of the 15 car rolling to a
Somebody had
stop.
an open mic that whole time. Check your mics and your headset connection.
But don't forget, Saturday on ABC Sports, it's going to be a college football doubleheader. Michigan State will face off against Michigan, or your coverage may be Wake Forest taking on Clemson. That's live at noon. Then stay tuned at 3:30 Eastern when USC takes on Florida State or Washington tackles Nebraska. And at 4 o'clock Pacific for our West Coast viewers only, Washington State collides with California. Don't forget to check your local listings or call your cable or satellite company for games available on pay-per-view in your area. So, Raul Boisel, one of those also out of the race in that last accident, Jan Beekes.
Yes, and of course, he saw that develop ahead of him. You saw two cars come together. Steve Knapp said that he thought it was Marco Greco that was at fault, but he came right over the top of Beechler. How'd you see it?
Well, I don't know how he can see he was behind me, but seems like both got together. You know, they just don't give room to each other. You know, they know that if you hit wheel by wheel here, you're going to be on the fence, and that's what's happened. They touch, they hit, they spun. You know, I slowed down, and Knapp hit me on the back. So unfortunately, because my car was really good, I never had a car so good for such a long time. My Transworld McCormick was perfect. And I thought today was one of the days that I could finish on top.
Well, you led for a while. Sorry, you're out.
Okay.
And with that yellow, look what happened. Lazier and Ward are both back in the hunt behind Unser, John Paul Jr., Roberto Guerrero, and Kenny Brett. The Intrigue IRL pace car begins now to move off of the race course. During the last seconds of the end of this yellow, the leaders came into the race, into the pits, got fuel. They may be thinking they're going to the end.
I think that's definitely the thought right now, Paul. John Paul and who was the other car that came in? The two leaders. Guerrero might have come in too, and I think they're thinking they go the distance.
Roberto Guerrero actually sits in the front of this field. Jeff Ward, he's the yellow car. He's moving in on position, trying to find a way through the front of the field, but remember, both Ward and Lazier got back on that lead lap and are now back into the fight.
And when you're talking about guys who pit road, of course, it was Robbie Unser who also took advantage of taking on some fuel. And to answer your question, they do not anticipate making another pit stop. They can make it the distance with quite a few laps to go. I think they're planning on some yellow. I'm not sure they can make that whole way under green.
Yeah, Jan, what are you thinking about it? Any chance at all under green, do you think?
Well, I suppose there's a chance, but that seems an awful lot of laps to me. That would be 52 laps by my count, and that is very, very adventurous to try and make that all green.
It's a long way to go.
And for John Paul Jr., Jonathan Bird told us the same thing. He said that is our last scheduled stop. Now, whether or not I think they're frankly going to need some yellow. And the way things are going, more than likely going to get it.
Well, now remember, Robbie Buell got back on the lead lap, then suddenly ran out of fuel. And so he's back in the same position he was, trying to get back into the fight once again. But right behind him, Ward and Lazier battled. They took advantage of that yellow. It got them back on the lead lap, and now they battle for second. The leader is Roberto Guerrero. Ward looks inside of Buell. He's got him. Now Lazier alongside Buell. A lot of oil dry still up in that corner after the accident.
Yeah, both Ward and Lazier really have had their work cut out for them today. They just made up that one lap deficit, and right now they're definitely running strong, both of them, and I think they're hoping they can go the distance as well.
Jan Vikas.
About Buddy Lazier, and I checked with Ron Hemmelgarn. Remember when Mike Groff and I were discussing putting on those sticker tires? So I asked the owner, Ron Hemmelgarn, why? He says, we are not having any problem with the Goodyear tires. He says the other reason that people were blowing them up is because they were running the pressures too high. We have not run the pressures that high all weekend. We have absolute confidence in the Goodyears, and they like putting the fresh sticker tires on every time they come on pit road.
Well, it's nice to have a guy that verbalizes just that sense as I'm going with it. I think we know what we're doing, and we're racing.
Definitely. I think some of the guys running the higher tire pressures, it certainly helped them in the qualifying trim, but, you know, Lazier, he didn't qualify particularly well. I think he was midfield. He qualified okay, but I think that's the difference right there. They were lower pressure. The car wasn't as quick in qualifying. In the race, it's paying off for him.
And Mike, to further add to that story, we were just checking again with the Goodyear engineers, and they said, we think we've got it under control now, but he says it's still very marginal. The tire pressures that they saw early were in excess of 50 pounds on the right rear, which he said was just way too high. Now they've got them back down in the mid-30s, and that's what they're trying to nurse home.
That's a big difference.
Massive difference. Roberto Guerrero, the number 23 car, leads the race, half a second back. As that fight between Lazier and Ward, though for the moment it looks like Ward has managed to put Lazier away and is now beginning to force Guerrero. Last lap was the fastest lap of the race.
Ward is flying right now. 2:23.5 he just ran, and I got to tell you, he's on a mission.
That fastest lap at 2:23.5 for Jeff Ward. The Intrigue IRL pace car been out a little too much in this race. It is a new vehicle, 3.5-liter twin-cam V6. And Dennis Weglars, who has helped so much with this program, now changes jobs, goes over to the proving ground. We want to wish him well.
We got a good battle shaping up for first here. Roberto is just not giving up the lead. I mean, he's liking that Infinity Power right now, and he's running strong. Wardy's running a little bit better right now, but Roberto's not going to have any.
They expected 60,000 people plus in the hot grandstand. Brian Tyler, who had a marvelous run going and suddenly slows on the backstretch. In fact, we were just thinking about showing you the fact that he was up in 8th place in the top 10, having a great run. Too bad for Brian Tyler. 60,000 expected. None seated on the backstretch here, so those are empty. But remember, this is a gigantic, second largest racetrack in the United States, if not the world. With 150,000 seats, most of the fans are over on the front stretch. And again, you can put 50, 60,000 in here and it not look like much. But they were coming into this track nice and early.
See Roberto and Ward working the traffic there. I think that's Mark Dismore, who's a few laps down. He's had a good car all day, but he's now you can see he's having some problems, and he is a few laps down.
Ward. Traffic ahead of Guerrero. That's Billy Boat. 43 laps down. Guerrero is spotted on past him.
Clear. I'll tell you, Paul, Roberto is hanging tough. He's working traffic just like the pro that he's always been, and he's doing a great job out there. He ain't wasting any time.
Look ahead of Roberto Guerrero, the 14 car, Power Team car, Kenny Breck. Needs to win this race, but now he's a lap down. Other drivers here this weekend. Johnny Under is here looking for a ride. Jimmy Kite, remember Jimmy? He's up spotting, and he's got a deal now, trying to work something out with Terry Agajanian to try and find him a ride. He says he is clear to drive again in the IRL, and he's looking forward to it.
Speedway for more of the Pep Boys Lone Star 500.
Back at the Pep Boys Lone Star 500, I'm Paul Page with Mike Groff. The fight is at the front of the field, Roberto Guerrero and Jeff Ward. And the big question is whether or not these two cars can actually go to the finish. With 181 laps of the 208 lap scheduled distance complete, can they go to the finish with the fuel load that they're carrying and do it if they go green all the way to the finish? Now, battle at the front of the field, battle for the lead. Jeff Ward way outside.
Still outside.
And that's wheel-to-wheel racing right there. Those guys are definitely working for it.
Still outside.
Boy, next corner is the decision. Anybody going to lift? You really don't lift on this track with its 24-degree banking.
Outside. Outside.
I tell you, these guys are drag racing right now, and nobody has one leg up on the other. I mean, that Infinity's holding strong. The Aurora's running good, and it's pretty awesome racing.
Outside.
You keep hearing that outside in your headset. What's that do to you, Mike? Well, you know he's there.
Outside.
Oh, yeah. They see each other.
You're outside.
Wonder when Guerrero's going to say, hey, let it go. I can see him.
I don't think he's going to do that.
Outside. Outside.
He's not giving it up.
Is it to a point here where you may not even want to move your hands enough for the thumb to punch the transmit button?
You definitely do not want to talk on the radio right now, and I think Ward just made the move. It certainly wasn't something that Roberto gave up. I mean, he fought hard there, and I think he's going to fight just as hard to stay with him.
So Jeff Ward picks up the lead. You saw him also. Buzz Calkins haven't had a chance to talk about the man from Denver that much today. He came into the pits. Buzz running in 12th place. 16 different lead changes here today. 10 different drivers. Jeff Ward back at the front.
there hanging tough. I mean, he's not letting Ward get away. And right now, you know, that could be the right thing to be doing right now. Save a little bit of fuel. He's not saving much more. You know, his pace is a little bit slower than Ward's, but it might pay off.
Well, as we saw at the run at Pikes Peak, it didn't take much fuel.
It really didn't.
Kenny Breck ran out on the last corner.
And Paul, when you're talking about that fuel for Roberto Guerrero, check with the crew. He will have to come on pit road. They do not have enough fuel to make it to the end.
All right, so now we know about Guerrero. But what about Ward?
That's a good question.
We will do fuel only. Fuel only.
So Jeff Ward now tries to drive away. Go behind the scenes of a nightly sports show where the real-life stories happen. Don't miss the premiere of Sports Night. We're all looking forward to that during premiere week. It's this Tuesday at 9:30, 8:30 Central, right after the season premiere of Spin City here on ABC. Jeff Ward is out in front. The question is one of fuel for the top cars in this race as we run down to the finish. The Pep Boys Lone Star 500. Hopped onto the pit road. We expect this to be fuel only.
Going out.
And Paul, for Jeff Ward, we just checked with Bob Hancher and the crew down here. They need 6 gallons of fuel. 6 gallons is all. It'll be a time stop. What we don't know is how long they'll wait before they bring him in. Guerrero goes by us, and Ward's crew goes over the wall. We should see him on the next lap.
And Gary, the pit stop for Roberto Guerrero was a little under 9 seconds, so much longer than you would think just for a splash of fuel.
On the pit road and twisting the car looking for fuel is Buddy Lazier as Jeff Ward heads in as well. So runners at the top of the order all on pit road. It answers the fuel question, but it does not tell us who's going to be able to run hot to the finish.
It's Ward coming in now.
So there's Ward, who picked up the lead when Roberto Guerrero came in. And now John Paul Jr. picks up the lead of the race, but you know, the presumption is he's going to have to stop too.
Watching Jeff Ward's crew, time stop. They're also going for fresh rubber. No changes in suspension. Now rolling 10.3 seconds.
For Guerrero, they were happy with the tires on the car, fuel only. Here is John Paul Jr. now leading the race. The 52 car, Robbie Unser, sitting now in second place behind John Paul Jr. Think of how many times one 500-mile race win to his credit. Back a decade ago at the Michigan Speedway. And so much heartbreak for John Paul Jr. Look at this. Ward and Lazier once again. They fight for fourth.
Clear.
These guys are going to be wonderfully familiar with the decal style on each car, aren't they?
They're out there racing hard, that's for sure.
Robbie Unser is second. Guerrero is third. This is the fight for fourth.
Paul, in regards to Unser, I checked with Eddie Cheever, of course, the team owner, and he confirmed to me that they do not plan to come on pit road again. They are going to try and make it to the end of this race.
Keeping track of Dr. Jack Miller, he just came on pit road for a splash of fuel. He runs in 11th place. Back at the front of the field.
And a quick update on John Paul Jr. confirming they also still feel they will not have to stop for any further fuel as we're getting down toward the final 10 laps.
You bet. 196 laps complete. Whoa, right in front of the leader. Right in front of the leader. Davey Hamilton loses it. Shredded right rear tire.
Definitely blew a tire. You could hear that one blow.
Oh, imagine what that did for John Paul. So Hamilton's sitting on the grass right in front of the main grandstand, just beyond the start-finish line. And looks like pieces of that tire flapping around on the front of John Paul's car.
9 laps, we're doing great. Just keep on going.
John, you'll have 10 to go at the line. You'll have 10 to go at the line.
Unser's the only other car that leads laps as you are.
Here's a question to ask.
Is going to be about
Here may be the last guy in that whole championship fight,
like the next
uncharacteristically out of the race because Hamilton has been very steadfast. That may be a key factor in the championship. Here it is. Watch the rears. There it
no
goes.
question. No doubt about that. That was a right rear tire. No question about it. Not a good place to do it, I might add.
Well, John Paul Jr. had to have his heart in his throat on that one.
No doubt.
So now what does he think? 198 laps to complete. In the final 10 now.
I think John Paul's thinking right foot right now. He's just going to stand on it, and that'll be it.
Part of the carcass of the tire left out on the racetrack. Gary Gerald.
Jonathan Berg, Clayton Cunningham watching anxiously down here. John Paul Jr., their driver. What's the emotion now as you get closer to a possible victory?
Well, the emotion is that we just want to make sure everything continues to go right for this Visionaire Brian Heaney cooling car. It's been a great day for John Paul so far. He's done a wonderful job driving. The crew's done their job. The engineer, Keith Layton, has done a wonderful job with race strategy and figuring out all of the pit stops. We do not need to do another stop. So we're really looking forward to seeing a checker here real soon.
Any concerns?
No, we're okay on fuel, we're okay on tires, and the car's handling well.
Okay, they wait it out.
10 cars.
We're going to take one more look at Hamilton, who, by the way, they've already got him back into the action. Did John Paul see something there? You see that move?
It happened so quick. That's a good question, Paul. I don't know. It's hard to see much there. I mean, it just happened, and he went right on past.
Another story we've been following all day. Jan Beekes?
That would be the story of Robbie Unser, Eddie Cheever on the other end of the radio. You had a bit of a frustrated look when that yellow flag came out. Why?
I think we were the only ones that could have made it to the end on fuel. I don't think the 10 car could have done it. We did a very good job getting us to this point, but now we have too many cars, I think, between us and the leader. But we'll see. It's still a young race. Very tough track. It's been very hot running in the heat this hot, and Robbie's done a heck of a job so far keeping his head out of trouble.
So you don't think you're fast enough to run down the leader?
I didn't say that. I just said we had a bigger opportunity beforehand if we wouldn't have had a yellow. It's a lot easier to do it in the pits than it is out on the racing track. But there's a lot of traffic between us and the leader, so that really isn't that good.
All right, be fun to watch.
So at this point, the team can lobby somewhat to try and talk people to get out of the way. Now, whether they do or not, that's a whole different issue.
I'm sure they'll be trying, Paul.
And, by the way, Eddie Cheever said it was still a young race. About 8 to go. Now watch the tire on the right rear. See, there's some parts. They go back and they get John Paul Jr.
Yeah, it started early.
Yeah, so he's starting to make the move, and that was what we saw flapping around on the front of John Paul's car.
No question.
So he saw it start to shred and said, whoop, down to the inside I'm going. And then Davey went down there. Oh,
and it went in a hurry.
Is that... Are your eyes open?
I would have to guess that John Paul did close his eyes for at least a split second. I mean, that's tough.
I don't hear any loud noises or feel any bumps. I can open them again. So the Pep Boys, Lone Star 200 laps of the 208. John Paul Jr. is the leader. Goodness knows what's going to happen in the next few laps. The Pep Boys, Lone Star 500. The closing laps. Look all the way back. There is Robbie Unser. He is second place, but he's got 7 cars that he will have to overhaul just to get in touch with this man, the leader of the race, John Paul Jr. John Paul is on the threshold of a win in the IRL, and boy, I'll tell you what, it has been a long time, and there is not a more deserving driver. Keep an eye, though, on Robbie Unser. John Paul gets a nice restart, gets away from the entire field. Robbie Unser plays it safe. Gaggle of cars ahead of him, he comes hot.
Just touch it. Car high. Still there, 5 to go. Whoa, it's a lap down.
And you look at the leader, you look at the separation back to Unser. John Paul is the leader, 5 to go.
He's a lap down.
See, Ward's wanting to get that lap back, but I'm afraid with only 5 laps left, it's going to be very difficult, no matter how quick he goes. And he's been going quick, believe me.
Kenny Breck in 4th place.
4 to go. 4.
the side. Bryant Heating and Cooling up on the Colling. John Paul Jr., the driver. Whoa. Kenny Breck and Lazier behind him there. Not a fight for the lead of the race, of course. The fight is Robbie. And there he is. He is, in fact, closing.
3 to go. 3 to go. 3 more guys and you can get Jock.
The spotter calls it for us. 3 to go.
Robbie is definitely staying in the mix there. He didn't want to let the leader get away. Obviously, he wants to catch him and get past him. It's going to be tough. You got a lot of cars in between, but he's staying there.
There's been so much hard luck for John Paul Jr. He has had a truly tough time trying to get to the front of this field. But his career is about to take a major turn. And Jonathan Bird, as an owner, is about to see a victory. Robbie Unser does not appear to have what is needed to get down that straightaway and catch him.
Look at low, look at low, look at low.
Roberto Guerrero, that's just to get back on the lead lap.
Okay, you're clear.
Guerrero is fourth. Fifth place, Breck will come up now. 1 to go. 1 to go for John Paul Jr. What an odyssey to get here today. John Paul Jr. not in this car at the start of the year. Of course, it was Mike Gross at that time. Now he is in it, looking at a victory. Mike Groff rolls it off the final corner. And John Paul Jr. has taken the win, the 10 car.
All right. Hey, everyone off the radio for a second. We need to
even the crew's running off the radio now. They're getting ready to celebrate in victory lane. Look at how beat they are. A long day in the hot Texas sun, and the end of the day belongs to John Paul Jr. Robbie Unser just had too many cars between him and the leader of the race as they came back from the late race yellow. It gave the victory to John Paul Jr., and I'll tell you what, this is an extremely deserving young man. John Paul Jr. wins the Pep Boys Lone Star 500 at Texas Motor Speedway. What a great day for John Paul Jr. We'll be back to talk with him.
And the roar from everybody around, the confetti. John Paul, 15 years ago, you and I met in the Michigan 500. Your only champ car, IndyCar type victory, and here you are now as a first-time winner in the IRL. What kind of emotion is running through that body of yours at this moment?
Well, Gary, it's been a long 15 years. First, I have to thank God for giving me this opportunity, my wife and my kids for standing by me, Jonathan Bird and his wife for giving me this opportunity in this car. Today, it was just awesome. It couldn't do no wrong all day long. I'm just as fresh as a daisy. I'm ready to go another 300 laps around this place.
So many guys had tire problems today. John Paul Jr. has got the victory. Congratulations from all of us.
Thank you very much. This feels good.
So here are the unofficial results at the end of the Pep Boys Lone Star 500. And as we show them to you, we want to remind you we did try to get a spokesman from Goodyear to discuss any of the issues with the problems. They did not have a spokesman on site that could do that. Marco Greco, he is now being recorded in stable condition, and they will put him through a CAT scan before they decide any other issues that might have occurred there at Parkland Hospital. Now, the points right now, well, the battle will go to the season finale at Las Vegas. 3 drivers are in the running for the Pep Boys IRL Championship: Breck, Hamilton, and Tony Stewart. I'm Paul Page for Mike Groff, Gary Gerald, and Jan Beekes. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you later.